Le Club International, evening. Le Club International is a tennis and yacht club on the Inland Waterway in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. It is frequented by the wealthy and by figures in sports and show business. A small combo band is playing, and on a wall at the end of the bar, color slides are being projected by an automatic car. The slides are candid photos of club members taken at recent events, tennis matches, and regattas. The bar is crowded. John Western is turning away with 2 drinks when he comes face to face with Guy Schuler. He manages to shift the 2 drinks into his left hand and hold out his right. John: I enjoyed your presentation. I'm John Western. They shake hands. Guy Schuler. John: We're at the table in the corner there. Why don't you join us? Guy, looking to where John has nodded. Thank you, I will. Let me get a drink. John goes to the table. Guy looks after him. He pushes through to the bar. John at the table sets down the drinks. At the table is his girlfriend, Kelly McGannon. She is a pretty blonde in her late 20s. John is in his late 30s. John: The professor's coming over. Kelly: Oh, good. Passing member: Hey, John. John: Hey. Kelly: Now don't try to stump him with some bizarre question. John: I want to know about their blood groups. Kelly: No, you don't. John: Cheers. Kelly: Cheers. On the screen behind them are 2 consecutive slides of John and his friend Peter Gregory. John: Did you get a hold of Eric? Kelly: I didn't have to. He's staying on the boat. Good. Here he is, rising. Guy, this is Kelly McCammon. Guy: Hello. Listen, I'm sorry, but I can't stay. I didn't realize what time it was. I'm already running about half hour late. John: How much sailing have you done? The guy: Some. John: Have you crewed? Do you know about sailing? Guy: Well, I don't want to call myself a sailor. I've crewed some, yes. Why? John: Why don't you go to the Cat Cay with us on Saturday? Guy: You're in the regatta? John: Yes. Guy: That's very interesting. John: What are you doing in the morning? Guy: Well, John: Do this. Sleep on it and come down in the morning and look at the boat. Guy: All right. The boat's here? John: It's at Pier 66. They've had the auxiliary out of it. Guy: All right. What time? John: Is 8 o'clock good? Guy: 8 o'clock is good. John: Great. Guy: Thanks. I'll see you in the morning. John: Good night. Guy lifts his hand. Guy: Good night. Good night. Good night. He leaves through the crowd. Kelly turns to John, smiling. Does he look like a sailor? Guy: No, he looks like a marine biologist. Le Club International, in the morning. John comes down the stairs. He is dressed casually but well. He stops at the desk and picks up the morning papers. Ellen, the girl at the desk, smiles at him. Ellen: Good morning, Mr. Western. John: Morning, Ellen. He goes out onto the terrace, looking at the front page of the Fort Lauderdale paper. The terrace is empty, and he takes a table near the pool. Margaret, a middle-aged woman in uniform, comes out with a tray on which is a cup and a carafe of coffee and a glass of juice. She sets the tray on the table and serves them. John: Morning, Margaret. How are you? Margaret: Fine, Mr. Western. Did you want your regular breakfast? John: Yes, please. Lambert, the club manager, appears. He looks out on the terrace and sees John and comes over to his table smiling. John looks up. Lambert: John, how you doing? John: Morning, Lambert. Sit down. Lambert, patting John on the back: Can't do it. Got a kitchen conference in about 3 minutes. Did you get your boat glued back together? John: I think so. Lambert: Chuck says those guys are good. John: I think they're good. That kid, Bill, has been to Detroit diesel mechanic school. Lambert, smiling: When are you going to let us sell you this place? John: If I bought it, I'd have to move out. Laughing. Lambert: Isn't that the truth? He pats John on the back again and leaves. John smiles, watching him go. He returns to his paper. Margaret is coming across the terrace with his breakfast tray. Le Club International. A Ferrari starts up in the morning in the parking lot, and a motor runs up. In the background, beyond the wall of Bougainvillea, are the masts of boats. John is standing at the curb in front of the entrance. The car pulls up, and a boy flips the throttle and gets out and holds open the door. The car is a 1984 Ferrari Boxer, red with tan interior. John hands the boy a bill and gets in the car. John. Thanks, Dennis. Dennis. Thank you, Mr. Western. The car pulls off down the drive and out of the gate. There's a guard at the gate dressed in the uniform of a Bahamas police officer, complete with pitch helmet, and he salutes smartly as the car goes past. Boulevard, in the morning. The Ferrari moving along, passing the line of cars on the right. Past the beach and the ocean. Pier 66. Still morning. The Ferrari pulling into the parking lot. In the parking lot, John walking along the rows of cars looking toward the docks and the boats. A 1966 Oldsmobile Toronado pulls into the lot and turns into a space. Guy gets out and shuts the door and comes across the parking lot to where John is standing. John watches him. Good morning, John. Good morning. They shake hands. John. That's an interesting car. Guy, looking back. The Toronado? John. Is that a 66? Guy. Yes. You like cars? They're walking towards the docks. John. I like cars. Guy smiles. He looks around at the boats and they walk down the pier. Guy. I've never been down here. John. Where do you live? Guy. Well, New York is a good part of the time. I'm at Columbia. Actually, I spent a lot of time traveling. I've been in Sri Lanka quite a bit in the last couple of years. John. In Colombo? Guy. Yes. Have you been there? John. No, I have a boat there, actually. Guy. You have a boat there? John. Yes, I just bought it. Or I'm in the process of buying it. Here, this is it. Eric. The boat is a 52-foot sloop named Farfetched. A pretty young girl looks up out of the hatch. Her name is Debbie, and she is Eric's wife, and she works on the boat. Debbie. Good morning. John. Morning, Debbie. They board the boat. John. Debbie, this is Guy Schuler. She comes forward and they shake hands. Hi. Guy. Hello. Debbie turning. Eric. Guy. Nice boat. Eric comes up from below. Eric. Morning, John. John. Eric, this is Guy Schuler. Eric. Hello. Eric holds out his hand and they shake. John. Guy is a deep water sailor and he's going to Cat Cay with us. I want you to show him the boat. Spend some time with him. Answer his questions. Guy, smiling. Don't listen to him. I'm strictly an amateur. John. Got an hour, don't you? Just hang out and let Eric show you where everything is, and I'll see you at the club Friday morning. Need to be down about 6 or 6:30. Eric. You had your breakfast? Guy. Yes. Eric. Come on. You'll drink a cup of coffee, won't you? John. Starting down the gangwalk. See you Friday. Guy looks after him, a bit bewildered. Eric. To Guy. Or maybe you'd rather have tea? Guy. Looking after John's departing figure. No, coffee's fine. Eric. You met my wife. Guy. Yes. Eric turns and starts down the hatchway. Eric looks back at Guy, who follows after him, looking back after John. Debbie is behind Guy, waiting for him to go below. She smiles at him. He turns away and starts down. Eric. So, John tells me you might be going to Sri Lanka with us. Guy halts, puzzled and amused. Then goes on. The Atlantic Ocean, in the morning. The sloop is running in blue water. John is at the wheel, and Eric and Debbie and Kelly and Guy are at different stations on the deck. In the cockpit with John is his friend Peter Gregory, a titled Irish aristocrat about John's age. He is sipping a tall, cold drink and looking out to sea. Peter. Now, John, I know that you have your own possible suspect agenda here for this voyage, but I would like your reassurance that under no circumstances shall we lose sight of my continuing mission. John. Absolutely. Peter. Under no circumstances. John. None. Peter. I've pulled in my horns, you know. Minimal requirements. Minimal. John. Very sensible, Peter. Peter. These are prime grounds we're approaching, and we've every prospect of success. Don't you agree? John. Absolutely, Peter. Every prospect. Peter. I don't care where her wealth comes from. Truly, I don't, John. John. Quite right, Peter. This is America. Peter. She can be a sanitation heiress, I don't care. A mafia princess. I won't even inquire, John. John. Excellent attitude. Peter. I'm simply no longer concerned. John. Nor with what she looks like. Peter glances at John suspectfully and then looks back out to sea. Smiling. John. You're hedging. Peter. Not a bit of it. Couldn't be more serious. The only absolute requirements are wealth and breasts. Beyond that, it's anybody's game. John. I hold you to your word. Peter. And that you have, John. Bobs are red. John. Banknotes and bosoms. Peter. Coins and cleavage. John. Portfolios and pulchritude. Peter. Ducats and décolletage. John, laughing. Ducats and décolletage? Peter. Absolutely. There's a shout, and from the foredeck, Eric is pointing to sea. John and Peter look. In the distance, a whale breaches wildly, standing on its tail and slamming into the water. Peter. God, what kind do you suppose it is? John. It's a humpback. The whale breaches again. All watch. Peter. Quite a magnificent thing to see, isn't it? I've never seen that. They watch the horizon in silence. John. He's gone. Pier at Cat Cay in the evening. The Farfetch has pulled into a slip and the crew are making fast. Eric throws down a line to the dock. Officials from Le Club International are at the dock with a clipboard. A man in his late 30s and a young woman, both in sports clothes. John and Peter are coming up the dock. John. Paul. Where have you been, John? John. We stopped for lunch. Paul. Pretty good time, actually. John. Is that the only other boat in? Paul, looking to where he's nodded. The Budweiser boat, yeah. Peter. Bloody factory entry. Paul laughs. Linda. John, if you want all rooms better, let me have your names. It's first come, first serve. John. Right. Put me down for one. Peter? Right. Peter Gregory. She enters their names. John looks down the dock. Kelly and Guy are coming along, talking, carrying hand luggage. John. Let's get a drink, Paul. Point the others toward customs, will you? Paul. Right. And congratulations. John. Thanks. Cat Cay at night. Lambert is on the stage. The club is full and the people at their tables are dressed casually but with elegance. Lambert is laughing and looking off stage, holding the microphone. Lambert. The last item on our Club International Cat Cay charity auction is very special, Bob. Wait till you see this little guy. Bob? He makes waving forward motions. He turns aside and puts his hand to the side of his face and then looks back through his fingers, laughing. Lambert. Bear with us a minute, ladies and gentlemen. Bob, we've had a little accident. Tell them to bring a mop. Tell them to bring 2 mops. Here he comes. Here he comes. Bob leads a young lion cub out onto the stage. Oohs and ahs from the audience. Lambert. He's a male. His name is Ralph. He's 3 months old. Okay, we'll start it off. Let me have. Got it. Okay. Let me hear it. Back here. 2,000. 2,000. At their table, Guy and Kelly and John and Peter are watching the auction. Kelly has her fingers to her mouth in concern for the cub. Guy looks serious and worried. Lambert. 5. I've got 5. Do I hear 6? Do I hear 6? 5,500. Okay, do I hear 6? Kelly looks toward the rear to see who is bidding. Lambert. I've got 7, 75 back here, 75. Do I hear 8? Do I hear 8? 75, 75. We're going to do it, folks. Kelly. What is she going to do with them, John? John. You'll have to ask Frank. She looks at the cub with concern. Guy is looking on with a dead expression. Lambert. 75, 75. He lowers the microphone and looks at the crowd. Then he raises the microphone again. Lambert. That's it. Sold for $7,500, Bob. Bob picks up the cub and puts it under his arm and starts down through the crowd. He approaches John's table and holds the cub out to Kelly. Kelly pats him on the head and looks behind her to the table where the bidding has come from. But Bob doesn't take the cub away. He stands there smiling. She looks at Bob. She looks at John. He's sitting back in his chair, smiling. Kelly. John? She looks up at Bob. She reaches and takes the cub. Kelly. Oh, God, he's gorgeous. Look at his feet. Hi. Oh, John, what am I going to do with him? People are coming over to see the lion and to touch it. Kelly holds him and pets him. Bob. Paul has the papers. You'll need them to get him back into the country. Band music starts up, and John rises. John. We better go, babe. Kelly. What am I going to do with him? John. Come on. We'll take him to the beach. Guy, don't let him keep you up all night. Peter? Peter. Good night, John. They leave. Kelly with the cub in her arms. Peter. Well, Schuler, I think we should adjourn to the bar. Guy. What is he going to do with it? Peter, rising. I expect they'll have to find a home for it eventually. Guy, rising. She's already in love with it. Peter. Yep. I bloody well wish they'd have left the little bugger at us for the evening. We'd scavenge up every unattached female on the premises. Guy. Did you know he was going to do that? Peter. No. John likes to keep his ball in the air. They reach the bar. Peter is ordering. Guy has turned to look at the room. Peter turns back to Guy. Guy. She's very nice, isn't she? Peter. Yes, she's very nice. Listen, you mustn't worry about the cub. John's actually a quite responsible sort of chap. Guy looks at Peter. He nods. The barman sets their drinks down and they take them up. Cheers. Cheers. They drink. Where'd you meet him? John. At the club, actually. I was coming out one morning and he was waiting for his car and the boy pulled up in his Ferrari. Not the one he has now, but another, a Daytona Spider. This was 10 years ago. The car was just out and it was the first one I'd seen, and I said something about it and he asked me if I'd like to go for a ride. I said yes, I would. He walked around and got in on the passenger side. I leaned down and asked, was it his intention that I drive, and he gestured at the empty seat. So I got in and shut the door. The motor was running, of course. I looked at him and he was sort of smiling, and I thought perhaps he knew who I was, but of course he didn't know me from Adams off Ox. I introduced myself and we shook hands over the gearbox tunnel and I engaged the gears and we left. Guy. So you went for a ride in this car? Peter. We drove to Key West. We were gone for 3 days. Smiling. Guy. What did you do? Peter. We talked. We began to talk and pretty soon we were in Miami and we just kept going. We'd put the hood down and going across the key bridges he said to punch it out, and I did. We crossed from Marathon to Big Pine flat out at 180 miles an hour. We met some girls in Key West and we went out to where the shrimp boats come in and filled a cooler full of shrimp and lobster and iced down some white wine, and we went to the beach and grilled everything over charcoal. Still talking. We even managed to let the girls escape, if you can imagine. We went to some clubs on the strip, stayed up all night and got rooms the next day and slept. Met some more girls. Finally got back to Lauderdale in the afternoon following and went to the club looking rather disheveled and sat talking until about midnight, and then John went upstairs with a young lady, and shortly after I went to my room and slept for about 12 hours. And that's how I met John. Guy. This was before Kelly? Peter. Oh, yes, much before. Guy. What'd you talk about? Peter. I can't think offhand of anything we didn't talk about. Guy. Why do you think you hit it off like that? Peter shrugs. To quote Montaigne, when asked the same question about his friend Botti, because it was he, because it was I. Peter is looking over the room. Peter. Women are a frightful problem. I don't know if you've noticed. There are some lovely things here, Schuler. Guy. The problem is to know who's spoken for. Peter, turning, seeming serious. No. One mustn't think that way. It betrays a defeatist frame of mind. Fair field and no favor. That's the rules. A pretty young girl in a low-cut summer dress comes to the bar alongside Guy. She gives an order to the barman. Peter leans forward, speaking past Guy. Peter. Hello. Girl, smiling. Hello. Peter. You're rather lovely. The girl. Oh, well, thank you. You're English. Irish, actually. You're not an heiress by any odd chance, are you? Girl, smiling, shaking her head. I'm afraid not, sorry. Peter, sighing, looking approvingly at her décolletage. Well, 2 out of 3 isn't bad. Oh, I'd like you to meet my friend, Guy Schuler. The beach at night. John and Kelly are walking along the beach with the cub on his lead. Kelly. He's going to break my heart, John. John. Would you rather someone else had him? Kelly. No. John. There were at least 2 totally mindless drunks bidding on him. Kelly. I know. They stop. John turns to her. John. You don't always have a choice about everything. Sometimes things get handed to you just because you're the only one there who won't drop them. Kelly. I know. But you wanted to be a hero. Smiling. John. What's wrong with that? She smiles. She shakes her head and they walk. Kelly. I couldn't stand for him to be in a zoo. John. He won't be in a zoo. Annabelle will take him. Kelly. We could ship him to France? John. Why not? Kelly. Oh, John. Do you think they would take him? John. I don't know why they wouldn't. They've got lions all over the place. One more shouldn't be any problem. Kelly. And I could visit him. John. And you could visit him. She bends down and picks up the cub. She holds it and kisses it on top of its head. There are tears in her eyes. Kelly. Why do I feel that somehow everything is a lesson? John. I don't know. Do I do that? Kelly. I don't know. Sometimes I think so. As if you were saying, this is the way the world is. John. It is the way the world is. She holds the lion up. Kelly. Ralph, I'm not going to cry over you. You're going to a beautiful place, and you'll have lady friends, and make babies, and be happy. Do you think he'd go in the water? The beach at night. A retired English couple are walking on the beach. They see the cub. John and Kelly are out in the surf to their knees, calling to him, patting the water. Kelly. Here, Ralph. Come on, come on. Englishman. No, it's a lion. Englishwoman. A lion? Really? She draws closer to her husband. He smiles. The Englishman. Well, I shouldn't think he's dangerous. He's quite young. Englishwoman. Well, silly, I can see that. But there could be larger ones in the vicinity, couldn't there? Cat K, in the morning. The Far-Fetched pulls away from the slip. The crew is busy with the sails. Kelly is in the cockpit holding the line. She waves to Paul and the others on the dock. A bay off Bimini at noon. The boat is anchored and the crew skin dive for lobsters, bringing them to the boat and tossing them to Debbie. On the deck at evening, the crew is having dinner. Lobster and a salad in a large bowl, several bottles of iced wine. Peter. They must be able to see the destruction going on among them. They must be aware of it. Guy. Maybe hope springs eternal in the whale's heart, too. I don't know. If you look at the history of species, there seems to be no selective advantage to intelligence. It's the microbes who have totally ignored selection for 3.5 billion years that remain with us and probably will remain. They seem almost immortal. The process of evolution appears to be about specialization and adaptation, and yet these are the very things that seem ultimately to mediate against survival itself. John. Do you think the whale will survive? Guy. No. They sit quietly. The sun is setting. Kelly. You think we'll kill them all off? Guy. Yes. Peter. Well, doesn't that make your work... It makes it rather beside the point, doesn't it? Guy. I don't know. I almost gave it up at one point. It was more than I could bear. They do have the power to totally ensnare you. Shaking his head. I don't know. I have a resistance to large questions. I've always been a skeptic. We know next to nothing about almost everything, and we have no patience. Ideas are useless. We want ideologies. The only way to fix anything is to fix everything, so we fix nothing. The only thing worth knowing is the secret of the universe, so we sit in ignorance. Whales have been evolving for 30 million years, to our 1 million. A sperm whale's brain is 7 times the size of mine. It is more complex in a number of ways. It has 4 lobes to my 3. It has greater folding and fissuring in the cerebral cortex, itself an indication of a complex intelligence. The great size of his brain has little to do with the great size of his body, other than as a place to keep it. Dinosaurs had tiny brains. I don't have questions that can address these facts. I'm not sure what such a question would look like. I have what-if fantasies, little scenarios. What if the catalyst or the key to understanding creation lay somewhere in the immense mind of the whale? The question whether they are as smart as we are is not a real question. Smarter at what? From whose point of view? From the structure of the brain alone, it's obvious that they can think very differently than we do, and they have almost nothing else to do. Life is very easy for a whale. They have enormous leisure. Feeding takes little of their time. Some species go for months without eating anything, just completely idle. So they have this incredible mental apparatus, and no one has the least notion what they do with it. Lilly says the most logical supposition based on physiological and ecological evidence is that they contemplate the universe. I know that sounds absurd, but is it? Do we know? He says the reason whales fail to make more evasive or aggressive action against whalers is not because they've evolved for millions of years without enemies, but because to a whale's body seems a rather strange place to be in the first place. So I dream up these scenarios. Suppose God came back from whatever it is he's been and asked us smilingly if we'd figured it out yet. Suppose he wanted to know if it had finally occurred to us to ask the whale. And then he sort of looked around and he said, "By the way, where are the whales?" And we said, and he said, "Yes." And we said, "Well, we use some of them for axle grease and fertilizer, and the rest of them we fed to the dogs." They sit quietly. John: "Do you believe in God?" Guy, smiling: "No. But I don't think the world is made up of things. I don't think it's that simple. I used to. I don't anymore. A whale is not a thing. That ultimately is what I've learned about them. I cried for them for 10 years. Now people find me very unemotional about whales. I think they can find that hard to understand. I guess I finally came to the conclusion that you could weep or you could work, and I'd rather work." Peter: "But if they're going to be all killed off anyway." Guy: "I know." He meditates. "I don't believe in God, but I think the whales force you into these theological metaphors. Mother Teresa was interviewed a while back by a Time correspondent, and he asked her if she didn't get discouraged with her work. I mean, all she does is deal with hopeless poverty and terminal disease. And she seemed puzzled by this question, and she said, 'No, I don't get discouraged.' And then she said, 'He didn't call upon me to be successful. He just called upon me to be faithful.'" He leans forward, listening. On the deck is a speaker. We have been hearing very distant whale songs, but now there is one that is louder. Guy: "That one's closer." John: "How close is closer?" Guy: "He's still a long way off, several miles probably." John: "You spend a lot of time with a hydrophone in the water just listening." Guy: "Yes. If you want to know about whales, you have to listen. Among other things, they are very sophisticated mobile sonar stations. They rely almost completely on sound for making their way in the world." They sit listening. John: "If you think the whales are doomed, what about us? Do you think we're doomed to extinction too?" Smiling. Guy: "Don't you?" John: "Sometimes." Kelly: "Oftentimes." Guy: "I don't know. We don't seem equipped to deal with these questions. I don't think you can say what death is when you don't know what life is. If I don't know what the whale is, how can I talk about his non-existence? What is it that doesn't exist? There are times when I see the whale very differently. When I get a fleeting vision of the pure platonic whale, and I have a sense that what we're after, the whaleness of the whale, does exist as an idea, but an idea with which we are inadequate to deal. I think that's why we kill them. I think their value as produce is secondary to their sacrificial value. It's our inadequacy to the overwhelming fact of the whale's existence that will kill the whale, that will doom the whale. I think Melville was right. It's like killing God. That whale's existence is the whale I can't deal with. That is the whale who strings the world together on the vectors of his breath, and I won't know in this world where that whale will have gone when the last whale is slaughtered and hauled from the sea. But that there can be no whale seems a sort of monstrous paradox, as if we were to say that the universe, if it should contract again into the singularity from which it sprang, would then no longer exist. According to whom? Non-being requires a witness, the same as being does, and if the whale should come to no longer exist, still in some way I think I would disbelieve in our competence to say that that was so. He smiles. At other times, of course, I see only the empty, silent seas through which he has passed forever.